Daredevil Born Again Season 2 is out in full on Disney+. 8 episodes, around 50 minutes each. This is the superhero show set in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, stars Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio. Story continues directly from the ending of Season 1. Matt Murdock is officially missing, but he continues to disrupt Mayor Fisk's illegal operations as Daredevil. When he tracks down a boat smuggling illegal weapons into New York for the CIA, and that boat sinks in the harbor, Fisk is furious and ramps up the activities of his anti-vigilante task force, cracking down upon the city of New York. So I'm a big fan of the original Netflix show, which ran for 3 seasons, and when it comes to Born Again, I enjoyed the first season. But I thought it was a step down from what came before. But then again, it still had enough solid stuff to enjoy. With the second season, it's kind of difficult to quantify my feelings and put them into words. I still think it's good, but it strangely feels like it occupies this weird space between being excellent, because it has glimpses of excellence here and there, and being flawed and just okay. And it's not good enough to be the former, but I also don't think it's bad enough to unequivocally be the latter. And so it kind of awkwardly sits in the middle, and it's good by process of elimination. And the most frustrating thing is how often it has all the tools to be amazing, and it sort of fails to utilize them in the best possible way. You have Charlie Cox being the absolute definitive version of the character, and you give him a storyline where he's got this complicated dynamic with Bullseye, which just begs for exploring his Catholicism and guilt and conscience, and yet that is almost completely absent from this season. That aspect. Matt's faith is almost isn't a factor, at least not explicitly so. And similarly, the show, stupidly, I think, insists on having as much Daredevil as possible and as little Matt as possible, which sucks because the most interesting part of Daredevil has always been the balance between the Catholic lawyer by day and a violent vigilante by night. Having just one side of the coin be there feels reductive. You have Fisk, also played to perfection by Vincent D'Onofrio, and he's a bit more tame as a result of being a mayor, yet he's still doing his shady business under the table. And again, it feels like the show doesn't use this opportunity to explore the depths of that conflict. It is rather shallow and simple in that regard. Similarly, the subplot of Bibi Urek being a mouthpiece for the administration while secretly siphoning information from Daniel and trying to do good journalism. I feel that her double identity conflict would also be a fascinating aspect to explore and to mirror both Matt and Fisk, but she's more of a plot device rather than a fleshed out character, and her relationship with Daniel feels, again, kind of shallowly and simplistically explored. I think that the action is very well choreographed and shot, but also, unlike the old seasons, it doesn't feel like a necessary expression of characters and their conflicting philosophies. It feels like Marvel XX going, we need an action scene every episode, make them exciting. It often feels, sadly, like a superhero show interested in punching and kicking more than a vigilante drama interested in the internal moral conflict of the character that it once was. There are more great things in here that feel to various extents underutilized. Deborah Ann Wall is back as Karen. She's the emotional center for the show, and Matt, the public's reactions and resistance against the state-sponsored abductions and violence, very heavily reminiscent of ICE in America. The involvement of CIA and how that impacts Fisk. I felt that this was largely an afterthought. In the end, the fact that it was CIA and not some other random buyer doesn't really impact the plot at all. Heather's slow slide into insanity, which I loved as an idea, and just wished it was done slightly better. In contrast, I will say that Wilson Bethel as Bullseye is fucking sensational, and he really grew into the character, becoming the kind of more complete version of it, as it were. And for my money, he has also become the definitive casting choice. Three other things to mention. One, I think the ending to the show for Fisk specifically was outrageous. I mean, you have him go on this cartoonishly violent rampage to this extent. You cannot just tidy things up the way the show does, and sweep it under the rug. There would have to be more consequences, and I feel like they slight spoilers, they avoided sending him into prison again because that happened twice already in the original show, and perhaps the writers didn't want to have to deal with, okay, how does he escape prison again in the next season. But still, it doesn't feel realistic at all. Two, I dislike how relatively little it feels like a New York show. The first three seasons on Netflix would have so many scenes on the street in nighttime, on the rooftops with the neon signs. It felt like we were there in the gritty reality of Hell's Kitchen. The Disney version feels much more cramped and sanitized, with most of it taking place in just several different rooms. And three, this is something I repeat from my review of the first season. I'm still not a fan of the show's editing and how often it will intercut scenes of Fisk and Matt doing something at the same time. I get what the filmmakers are trying to do, showing the parallels or contrasts between the two characters, but it's used way too much in this way, and in the end it takes you away from the scenes, which also they should have been longer. They should have been allowed to breathe more. Then, so it takes you away more than it makes you appreciate the mirrors. In general, it's like most of the episodes were just fine for me. Each would have a scene or two which would make me go, I don't really like how they executed this. And each would also have a scene or two that would make me go, shit, I can't really complain because this is amazing. So in the end, it became very hard to judge for me. I cannot and will not say it's great because it doesn't deserve that, but I also cannot say that all these flaws make it straight up bad or even mediocre. I still think it's good, but you can clearly see how it could have been so much better if it was just done ever so slightly differently. Maybe in the third season we'll get there. We'll have to live and see.